All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a discussion of Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is the beginning of what is going to be a great journey through Guy Gavriel Kay's books, and I'm really excited for this. And I'm going to be talking today with my guest Evan, who is also known as the Nerdwriter. Hello, Evan. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me again. I had such a good time last time with you and some other guy whose name I can't remember.
And who was that guy? Who was it? So Evan had previously joined me for a discussion of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, where we talked about how the themes and the structure of the books intertwined in such interesting ways. And we were joined by the nemesis, Dr. A.P. Canavan, also known as Professor Fireballs, whom we all know and love. We'll confess that. He
Love him.
loved the guy. And we're going to be doing this today, though. This I'm excited for because this is a reread for me, and I loved it the first time, like, I don't know, 30 years ago, whatever it was. Probably less than 30, but somewhere between 20 and 30 years ago. It's a first read for you. We're going to start with our non-spoiler assessment, just mini review, and then we are going to give you a warning when we dive into the spoilers. So, Evan, what are some of your non-spoiler thoughts about the themes, about your experience overall with Guy Gavriel Kay's Tigana? Did you like it?
So the short answer is I loved it. Um, in interviews and in the author's note as well, Kay he questions the necessity of making a distinction between books that are page turners that keep you up late into the night and books that engage deeply with, profound themes and then have complex characters and stories. And you don't have to make that distinction with Tigana. It accomplishes both remarkably well. I flew through this book. I was so excited to figure out what happened next. But what really attracted me to it while I was reading and after it was over was Kay's really remarkable engagement with ambitious themes. And he says that it is a very ambitious book in terms of its thematic work. And I think for the most part, he treats those themes in really compelling and interesting ways. There are a couple times where I think his ambition it exceeds his execution or his ability to execute on some things, which
Uh-huh.
we can talk about.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it hits it out of the park. And as I was telling you before we started, somewhat rare for me. I was really inspired after reading this book to
Mm.
go on and read other texts that explore the themes that he does in Tigana. And that was such a fun and beautiful experience. And I came out of it with the feeling that this is really a text that's in conversation with a lot of other texts. And the combination, the constellation of ideas there, they illuminate each other and make for just a really rewarding experience. So if this, I've heard that there are better books by Kay, but if this is if this is not the best, I mean, I'm excited to see where else he goes.
Yeah, brilliant. What are some of the other books that you read after being inspired by the themes, which we're going to talk about in a moment?
So the couple books that I read about four as I was patiently waiting for Philip to finish the book. I read a few books. The first one I read was Milan Kundera's The Book of Laughter and Forgetting,
Uh-huh.
which is name checked by Kay in the author's note, and that's where I started. And that it goes a little deeper into the ways in which living under oppressive and repressive regimes, the ways that those things can be displaced into your sexual life and into your romantic life.
Yes. Yes.
And because he said he was inspired by that, and I was interested to see more about that. Then I went on and read Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, which is
Uh-huh.
just a canonical text in post-colonial studies about the necessity or not of violence in the struggle for freedom,
Right.
which is obviously very relevant to what Allison and his crew is, I'm not going to do spoilers, are trying to accomplish here.
Yes. Some
And
of the
also
things they
the
feel compelled to do in the process.
yes, and some of the things that might make us feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, and then I read because I wanted a female perspective on these sexual dynamics. I read Marguerite Duras' The Lover, which is a beautiful book, poetic book. And that's the other thing too, is that Kay's prose is just beautiful and lyrical
Yes. Yeah.
and readable at the same time. That distinction too is also kind of disappeared by him because he's able to do very poetic writing, but you never feel like it's too complex or dense.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and there was one other book that I read. I forget what it was. Uh, I keep a list of all my books, just so that I can remember.
That's
Oh, yes, I read Silencing the Past by
ah,
Michelle Rolfe Trujillo, which
okay.
is a book about how history, how the making of history is suffused by power at every level. And that was something that I read to understand more about the ring dive section of this book, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh,
and
beautiful. Yeah.
and yeah, so it was this example of uh me wanting to sort of see what Kay was drawing on. Now, not that he read these particular books, but there is a spider's web of other texts that deal with these really deep themes that I encourage everyone to read. Like I said to uh, Philip in an email, I'm strange, so this is my idea of fun going to read.
I also have to
Reading
say the fact that you read all these books while you were waiting for me, now everyone knows how slow I am.
it wasn't really that slow. And they're not very long books.
Yeah.
But like I said, I was so Tigana is such a readable book that I really flew through it, like
Yeah.
I was up, a couple hours later than I should have been,
Yeah.
wanting to know what happened.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. And let's talk about some of these themes. Obviously, the intersections between memory and identity are really at the core of this story. And there are a couple passages that are not really spoilery that I just want to point to, where you see early on how important memory and identity are in the story. There's a passage here on page 98 for me. Memory was talisman and ward for him, gateway and hearth. It was pride and love, shelter from loss. For if something could be remembered, it was not wholly lost, not dead and gone forever. So, and there we go. We
I
great
have it right
minds think
here.
alike. Great minds thinking alike. Yep.
I love this quote
Yeah.
because it really gets to uh, obviously memory, and so we're still in non-spoilers.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
Uh, memory is obviously a huge, huge part of this book,
Yes.
and it's a huge part of the character Devin's life.
Yeah.
He is, there really isn't a main character here, but he's sort of the typical fantasy farm boy character who leaves his home.
Yep.
It's not exactly the same as, the hero's journey, but there's a lot drawing from that. But he has a very good memory,
Yeah.
not unlike, Severian, but maybe
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
trustworthy.
From the Book of the New Sun. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
low key Severian kind of memory. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
not as insane.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, no, it is such a I mean he's signaling early on, and even in the creation stories, the mythos of this world,
Yes.
you have this idea of not just memory, but also the importance of language and song and all of that, and how these things all intertwine in terms of identity. I love what he does with music in here as well, and
Yes.
weaving that into it. So another passage that I picked out was on page 128. Uh, and I'll just keep it a little vague here. It's again no spoilers to worry about whatsoever, but he couldn't sing of Tigana. and he was certainly not about to sing of passion or love, so he began the very old song of Eanna's making the stars and committing the name of every single one of them to her memory, so that nothing ever might be lost or forgotten in the deeps of space or time. So there you have the importance of naming in here, which is, if you read the back of the book, look, okay, the word Tigana is a big part of this story as the name of one of the provinces of the Palm, which is modeled more or less after Renaissance Italy, in that you have these smaller city-state style provinces that are very independent. There's a loose, it's sort of a peninsular place, right? The Palm is
Yeah.
like the boot of Italy in a way. Uh,
Shaped like a palm without, with three fingers,
Missing two fingers, yeah, which is kind of an important detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, within just the foundations of this world, one of the things that Kay brilliantly weaves in there, and I think a little bit of Tolkien influence, perhaps, with the idea of songs and mythos and all of that being an important part of memory and identity in here. So it's just woven throughout this thing, isn't it?
It is. And that's maybe it's a good time to cross over to the spoilers.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
let's do that. So we'll warn everybody. So obviously we both loved the book. If you haven't read it, go
yeah.
read it. It is fantastic. I agreed with everything that Evan said about the beauties of it. I too have a couple little nitpicks here and there. A section that I felt was not as well integrated into the story as everything else, but really for the most part, this was an absolute home run for me. So. Go read it. Now let's get into spoilers. This is your warning. We're going to do spoilers. Everybody, go away if you haven't, or if you don't care about spoilers, stay. And if you've read it, of course, uh, check out what we're going to about to do here. So, Evan, what did you want to talk about?
So let's talk about the basic conceit of the book, which is almost like, I kept thinking that it's almost fable-like in its simplicity, if you can put it in a very simple way.
Yeah,
And basically, what happens is that there is a palm. The palm, this continent, is full of little city-states, and from two directions, two empires come to colonize the palm.
yeah,
And they're led by two wizards, people with magical powers. And the one from Barbadior, Alberico,
yeah,
conquers the east part of the palm.
yeah,
He's coming over because he wants to. He essentially wants to gain resources for himself and power for himself, so that he can potentially become the next emperor of the Empire of Barbadior.
correct.
Um, on the west side of the palm, we have Brandon from the country of Egrath.
Yeah,
And what Brandon's motivation is that he's trying to get uh, another domain for. He has two sons. In order to prevent squabbling for his succession, he's going to give one of his sons Egrath, and he's going to give his second son, Stevan, the west part of the palm.
yeah,
He conquers it pretty easily, uses magic. He sends Stevan forward to what is a section at the bottom called Tigana to take them over. And there's a battle at a river, and that is really what happens in the prologue. And what happens is that Stevan is killed by the prince of Tigana.
yeah,
And this sends Brandon into a complete rage, the rage and grief of a father who lost his son. And he essentially destroys Tigana. He does that in a few ways. He destroys them in a very brutal military way by killing villages near Tigana, tearing down buildings, killing women and children. It is the way that it's described. He doesn't pull punches there. But then the other way, and this is really the key, this is really the sort of important thing about the whole book, is that he removes, with his magic, removes the name and the memory of Tigana
yeah,
from everybody in the Palm's minds, so that they cannot remember uh, that there was a place called Tigana, anything about its history, anything about its people. And the only people who can still hold on to that memory are the people who were living there when he did this magic.
They had to be born before this conquest.
It had to be,
Yeah.
and that is encompassing a lot of our characters.
Only those people
Um,
can even hear the name.
yes,
Otherwise, magically, no one else can even hear or retain that
it's
name
like a
to.
buzzing sound, like yeah. And that is very powerful, very elemental kind of story. The grief of a king who is enacting his revenge in this way of removing the identity of a whole place.
Yeah.
And then he calls one of the cities after his son, Stevanian, and he calls the whole region Lower Corte, which they make a point of saying that is an insult in itself because Corte was their greatest rival.
Yep.
And they're saying now it's Lower Corte, which is, it hurts. This
That is
really
a
hurts.
complete abasement. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I wanted to just talk about is that a lot of people have come up to Kay and said, "Or have you written this book about my situation, about the what was going on in my part of the world, in my country?" This magical obliteration of Tigana's name and memory, you can find echoes of it throughout history and across the world. It is something that a lot of people can understand on a deep way. And I did prepare some slides here because I wanted to
Well,
take you through a short historical journey showing the echoes of this in the real world. Because
yeah.
this is really part of what Kay is trying to do. He says in the author's note, he's trying to bring fantasy, this escapist form of literature, back home to us, and he
Yeah.
does that. And so let's look at a few of these.
Cool.
So here's, for example, simply one in 587 BC, going all the way back then. Nebuchadnezzar II destroyed Jerusalem. He burnt down the first temple, which had all of the writings of the Jewish people at that time
Yep.
destroyed. He exiled, like so many characters in Tigana are exiled the inhabitants of Jerusalem uh, to Babylonia.
Yep.
We have the really, really interesting Greek and Roman practice of damnatio memoriae, which is
Ah,
essentially the damnation of memory, a term that was applied later, but calls in for a practice that the Roman Senate had of memory sanctions, where they would literally pass a law saying that we will obliterate this person's memory. And the example I
wow.
have here is an example of what happened right after the death of the Emperor Domitian. The Senate was so overjoyed that they all met in haste and in a full assembly reviled his memory in the most bitter terms, ordering
Wow.
ladders to be brought in and his shields and images to be pulled down before their eyes and dashed in pieces upon the floor of the Senate House, passing at the same time a decree to obliterate his titles everywhere and abolish all memory of him. Now the Romans, this was they had lots of memory sanctions like this. It's so interesting to read about this. It obviously didn't succeed fully. Can it ever succeed fully? I mean, we know about this, so it didn't succeed fully.
Right. Right.
And of course, Brandon can't succeed fully. There's this remnant of people who still do remember Tigana.
I do wonder if
Um,
Brandon, if he wanted it that way as a kind of a form of torture for the people who defied him, as if it's even worse in a way than having it wiped from their memories as well, to not have anyone else even, not to say acknowledge, but even know of the existence. In a way, that's even crueler, I think.
yeah, I
But
agree.
yes, yeah, yeah.
I completely agree. And he even says as much in the book. There's a quote where he does say that it was for that he named the city Stevanian for
Yeah,
as a reminder of what they did.
to kind of rub your
Um,
faces in it even more.
yeah, and that you could say in a way that that is his fatal flaw, the thing
Yeah.
that comes back to bite him in the end.
We'll talk about Brandon a lot more because he's
Oh yeah.
much more complex than we're making him sound, and we especially see that through Dianora. But we'll get to all that. Yeah.
Oh, I want to talk about Dianora for sure.
Oh, me
Here's
too.
another example of the Romans. They obliterated the city of Carthage. Not only its physical fabric, but much of its history. And going
Hmm.
down further, the spoils of war included the ownership of not only Carthage's territory, resources, and people, but also its past.
Wow.
And they decreed that no one could live in Carthage for generations. And so we know a little bit about the Carthage, and this is a really great book too if you're interested in reading about this period of history. Carthage Must Be Destroyed by Richard Miles. But there's so much we'll never know because the city was burned down.
Yeah.
And Carthage did this to other civilizations. So, you
Yep.
know, we have the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. So
Yep.
much was destroyed there. We have, just so that I'm not picking on the European colonial powers too much, the Incas destroyed the Chachapoyas
Sure.
right before the Spanish showed up. Um, the Trail of Tears, bringing it closer to home. Um,
Yep.
we, the Americans forcibly dislocated the Cherokee Indians from the southeastern United States to Oklahoma. And for a people whose connection to the land is so much a part of their history and memory, that is a certainly an analogous form of what Brandon does to Tigana. And here
Definitely.
going to Franz Fanon's, and please cut in at any time. Um,
Yeah.
the Wretched of the Earth. Colonialism is not satisfied merely with holding a people in its grip and emptying the native's brain of all form and content. By a kind of perverted logic, it turns to the past of its people and distorts, disfigures, and destroys it. And
Hmm.
there's so many examples of this in the colonial period. Um,
It
in the
strikes
Book
me
of
as
Laughter.
well. Sorry. Yeah.
No, no, go ahead. Get.
You brought up language there, and it strikes me how central language and words are to all. I mean, Tigana is one word, but it stands for an entire culture, and in this case, they all share the same language. But I feel like language is so intrinsic to this as well, in the sense you can look at attempts to eradicate a culture by getting rid of its language as well. Like look at what's happened in Ireland, for example, with the English colonization of that country. And, or even as you mentioned, the Native Americans, the attempts, even long after the Trail of Tears, to eradicate their languages, because there's an understanding there that language being a lens through which you see the world is fundamental to a culture. And if you can get rid of their language, you can destroy the culture. That's
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I'm living in Barcelona, and so much of the what the people of the Catalan region have tried to do is preserve a language
yeah,
that
yeah.
they see as extremely important to their identity, and they have
Yep.
succeeded in many ways.
There are success
Um,
stories of that sort.
yeah,
You can look at Welsh,
absolutely.
you can look at Hebrew as a language that's been revived. You can look at there are success stories of peoples who have reasserted their identity in a sense through reviving a language. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we have the example of the communist disappearing of history and memory. You begin to liquidate a people by taking away its memory, destroy its
Yeah.
books, its culture, its history, and then others write other books for it, give another culture to it, invent another history for it. Then the people slowly begins to forget what it is and what it was. The world at large forgets it still faster. And here is a super interesting book,
Oh
if anybody's
yeah.
interested, called The Commissar Advantages. In
Yep.
the author's note of Tigana, Kay mentions seeing a photo in which decades before Photoshop, they were altering pictures
Yeah.
to essentially rewrite the history of moments in the public imaginary. And you could see here that that's exactly what they did.
Wow.
And finally, just the last one in 1984, of course, if the party could thrust its hand into the past and say of this or that event, it never happened, then surely was more terrifying than mere torture and death. The
Yeah.
past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, the lie became the truth. And that's so important because Brandon's big plan, as we learn, is that he's going to be magically extending his life and waiting out every living person in Tigana so
Yep.
that when the last one dies who was there when he set that spell upon the city, the name and the history of Tigana will be lost forever.
Right.
Um, and
Right.
so I just wanted to show those because this thing that happens in the book, which is this sort of inciting incident, what the whole book revolves around,
Yeah.
is something that you can find echoes of. They're not perfect analogies. This is not an allegory, um, one-to-one allegory, but you can find echoes of it across history and across the world. And it is why I think it resonates personally with so many people.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said. And in Brandon's particular case, there's a very personal element to this as well. Yeah, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's the loss of his son, Stefan, and the attempt to erase the entire history, the existence even of a culture, is in a sense his attempt to erase his own pain. And that's something that doesn't become fully evident until we see Brandon through Dianora's perspective and gain an understanding that this is now this is not an excuse for what he does by any means, because here you have an outside force that is coming in to conquer, and he experiences a little bit of a loss. Well, it's a big loss, but the idea that he would feel no remorse whatsoever, really, for doing this to an entire culture over his personal loss is frightening. But still, there is, I think, a human understanding of him that emerges, and it is that this is coming from a kind of love, you could say, that he loved this son so much that he, first of all, wanted to give him a place that he could rule, so that there would, as you said, be no rivalry with the older son, but also that he would do this to an entire culture to, in a sense, erase his personal pain. Vengeance is something that this plot hinges on. And whether Brandon, if he were able to have actually obtained that vengeance, and like the last Tigana dies, who could have remembered the name, and he's there, and he's like, well, now I feel much better. I doubt he would have felt much better, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but this is his attempt to deal with that pain, that very personal pain. There's a very human side of him. And from Dianora's perspective, this is actually, in a twisted way, an act of love, even. That this is all coming from that place, right?
Yeah. I mean, the response is disproportionate.
Slightly, slightly, yeah.
We can say we can say
It's
that
a
much.
bit egocentric to think that my personal pain is worth the erasure and the pain of an entire culture. Yeah,
Yes. I mean, we can understand why he did what he did potentially,
right.
but obviously it's no excuse for the deep, deep trauma he's inflicting on a
Yeah,
whole society of people. Brandon's one of those interesting characters where we don't we don't get much from him, from his perspective.
right.
We get it through Dianora, who is I think probably the most complex character in the book. I don't know
Agreed.
if you would agree with that.
Agreed. Yes, absolutely,
Um,
100%. The most fascinating character in the whole story. Yeah.
yes, and there's a lot to say about her, but there are times at which um, I did wish that we got more from Brandon, and
Yeah.
saw more of him. I mean, this book's doing a lot. That's sort of the thing, is that this book is doing a lot, and so it's already 800 pages or whatever, and so
Yeah.
um, there are times where you in order to fully invest in Dianora, you have to believe that she sees something in Brandon that is maybe deeper and more complex than what we get.
Mm.
Um, Now,
Mhm.
that's not necessarily true, because there's a lot of stuff that she's doing for herself in this relationship. The relationship between her and Brandon, the cause of it, the reasons for it, are very complex and very interesting from her side of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but Brandon, yeah, Brandon is, and that's the thing, is that so much of this book, and I want to talk about this too, is about the necessity to have balance in our memories.
Yeah.
And Brandon is one of those characters in this book, and there are a couple others who's essentially damned by his own memories, his inability to let go and move forward. Now, maybe you can never let go from that kind of tragedy,
Mm,
but because he's so determined to see through this vengeance, it ultimately proves his downfall. Now, I do not feel sympathy for for him in the
right.
end because I think he deserved what he got in the end, especially when the final, most brutal reveal is revealed, the
Yeah.
reveal about the fool.
That Valentine was actually
Yes.
Rune the Fool the entire time. There's another disproportionate, twisted act of let me
Ooh,
torture you in the worst way possible.
worst.
Keep a little bit of your consciousness deep down in there so you know what's been done to you and your people all this time. That's like rubbing your face in it, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
there's times where, Kay it's so funny because I think he lulls you into this like, oh, this is like a lyrical, beautiful poem of a story. And then all of a sudden he'll hit you with something that's so brutal that
Yeah.
it really shakes you.
Like blowing up the one poet lady's. Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
grape,
Yeah.
like a grape exploding.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, I do think Brandon is an interesting character in respect to Dianora, who I think is a
Yes.
much more interesting character.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
let's talk about her in a second because I will agree with you about everything you said, and I'll just add that Rune is an element where it's interesting to me, fascinating this conceit that Rune is actually so tied to Brandon
yeah,
or Valentine, let's call him by his real name. Here you've taken your worst enemy and you have bonded him to yourself so that he is an
yeah,
expression of your emotions. And that is, in a way, him saying, here, feel my pain. You now have a lifetime of feeling my pain, my enemy. It's a really fascinating
yeah.
conceit, I think.
And
And
the
we
most
see,
tragic part of that scene where the head explodes
yes,
is afterwards, where Rune starts chopping up the body
up,
of
and
the
we know that he's enacting Brandon's pain there. Yeah, his sense of betrayal and
and you
everything.
don't know that at the time. You don't
Yeah,
know that. And so that's one of those examples of a retrospective reading that is very powerful.
yeah, agreed,
Because you
agreed.
think about those scenes and you think, wow. And there are times when Allison sees Rune and thinks
Yeah.
there's a connection here. It's something, uh, yeah, that is a I like that. And I really like the ending to this book. Can I just say that? I think he really pulls off the ending.
Yeah, well, look, we're going to circle back to that ending because I
Yes.
do want to
Yes.
ask you about how you feel about certain, the lack of knowledge that is passed on. Certain things are kept secret from certain characters at the end. A couple vital things, both Baird and Alisson are kept from knowing certain things that might be very painful to them, and that's something we'll circle back to that ending, I think, because
I definitely want to talk about that. Yes.
yeah. But I want to go to Dianora because we've mentioned her a few times, and I think that she is, as you said, she is to me the most fascinating, complex character of this entire thing. I want to read a passage here. It's on page 540 for me, and it is to the effect that, or I'll just read what it says here. Hers was not a life meant to be made whole. She could see it
Yes.
now so clearly, and in that clarity, that final understanding, Dianora found the wellspring of her calm. This idea that her life was not meant to be made whole, it is so tied for me to the idea of memory and the role of memory and how we all have this self-narrative where we tend to smooth out the rough edges and we create out of our memories, tweaked memories, shaped memories, a sense of self. And that is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Now, Dianora has two halves to her life that are impossible to reconcile. There is the Dianora, who's the daughter of Savar, the sculptor, who set out to obtain vengeance herself to get rid of this curse by killing Brandon. And then there's the Dianora who actually fell in love with Brandon. And there are some pivotal scenes, the most memorable scenes of this entire book. One is the scene we just alluded to, where the poet and the native poet as well attempt to assassinate Brandon, and she
Saves him.
intervenes and can't even believe herself doing it. But she said, "Brandon, no, it's you. They're after you." The assassination attempt, and of course, she saves his life. ironically, when she had set out to assassinate him herself. All she had to do was be quiet. And the second one is the ring diving scene where she had already determined, I am going to die down here and thus save Tigana by not giving Brandon what he needs at this moment to appear to be a native ruler so that people will get behind him. I'm going to just die. That's all I have to do. And she cannot do it again. And it's, I think, one of the most powerful scenes I've ever read, actually. I was just completely blown away by this. And her surfacing again and Brandon showing emotion, the rare, maybe the
Yes.
one time when he actually, you see it on him, not on Rune, is that he collapses and he tells her he loves her. And that complete, actually, it was before she went diving in, and she's remembering it as she's down there. And that's what changes her mind. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it, because it's not that she changes her mind, it changes her heart, I suppose. But she surfaces and saves his butt. And, so this character is so conflicted. And I think that's one of the things that makes this book, as you said at the beginning, so readable, so page turnable, because there's tension on every page. Every character has tension, but nobody like Dianora. There's this tension in her life. These two halves, the edges of these two lives are just too jagged to bring together. There's nothing that can reconcile them. So, what are your thoughts on Dianora?
It's so well said. And she really is the way in for me to the larger theme of exploring what happens to people when their identity is compromised in the way that Brandon compromises a society's identity, removing its memory.
That
Because
trauma.
we have the character of Devin, who is another kind of main character, but he doesn't remember Tigana. And Allison, we don't really get a POV from Allison, right? And he's the prince in waiting, who's gonna rebel. And but Dianora is the one who not only remembers what Tigana was like before the fall, but she goes back to Tigana in secret in this plan that she has to assassinate Brandon. She's this
Lord
very
Corte, as it's called now. Yeah.
yes, she's just this very very long-term plan to do this, which eventually gets compromised when she finally meets him. We'll get to that, but I do want to get to this one section and read through a couple things here because this is the in the book where Kay most goes into this idea of what it's like as someone whose history has been erased. What is the identity of the exile and the exile who returns home? Um, so this is a part of the book that I've highlighted some of the important sections here. She's walking through the city of Lower Corte now,
Yeah.
and she is seeing the destroyed city that she once used to call home. There was an ache building in her as she went, and what hurt most of all she found was how much the same a place could be after everything had changed. And
Yes.
in that moment, Dianora had a truth brought home to her with finality. How something can seem quite unchanged in all the small surface details of existence where things never really change, men and women being what they are, but how the core, the pulse, the kernel of everything can still have become utterly unlike what it had been before. Everything is the same, but not. There's this, inability to reconcile the past and the present. The squat, ugly skyline jarred Dianora with a painful discontinuity. That's the word I was looking for, discontinuity.
Yes.
It was as if the eye was tricked, looking ceaselessly for something it knew had to be there, but wasn't there. Um, what, Dianora thought, her vision hurting for that absence, is a person who moves through her days as she has always moved, who speaks and walks and labors, eats, makes love, sleeps, sometimes even finds access to laughter, but whose heart has been cut out from her living body, leaving no scar at all to be seen, no wound by which to remember the sliding blade. What is such a person? Dianora thought again. That person whose heart was gone. She had no answer. How could she have had an answer? Loss coiled to life within her, and hate followed it again, as if both of them were newborn, colder, and sharper. than before. And
Wow.
so this is really one of the few most poignant sections where we see what how fragmented and how discontinuous the identity of someone who is forced to live in exile can become.
Yeah.
Dianora is that way in for us. She is wounded. She remembers home. She even goes back home, but it's not the home that she was,
It's
that
alien.
she knew.
It's
It's
alien.
alien in a very strange way. And this is something that people all over the world and all through history have had to deal with and try to reconcile it. In some sense, we even those of us who have not experienced this in a political way deal with this. There's the famous book by Thomas Wolfe, "You Can't Go Home Again,"
Hmm.
which is expressing the idea that you know everything we imagine from our childhood and the purity that we imagine there, we can't access it. We are in some ways always exiled from our past selves.
Yeah.
And this is a huge theme of this book. And it is I see it most clearly through the character of Dianora.
So true.
It's those things that I think motivate the choices she makes.
And you're absolutely right. I agree. It's most clearly shown through her, and yet it's woven into the other characters as well. Because Devin has that nursery rhyme that his father used to hum to him. He knew the tune. It's the towers of Avale. That's the city that Dianora is from, and Baird. And it's the lack of those towers that is in part is part of the is causing this alienness for her in her own native city. And at the
Absolutely.
end, Baird is determined to create towers, to bring that back as much as
It's
that's
beautiful.
possible, right? His thing in the end is I'm going to make towers. I'm going to be a mason. He's
A
basically
builder.
a builder. Yeah, he's going to, and the idea of rebuilding not just physical buildings, but one's national identity, one's culture. At the end there. Of course, poor Dianora being so torn in two is not going to be around for that because she essentially walks into the sea at the end of it all, knowing that she would not be allowed back, having had that half of her, which is genuinely in love with Brandon and feeling a
So
traitor.
can I ask you why do you think she fell in love with Brandon?
She
And that's a big question. That's a big question.
a big question. I mean, I don't think that we're talking about a case of Stockholm syndrome here. I think it's much more complex than that. I think we're talking about a person who, because she says herself, or she thinks this to herself, she had to know to get this man in order to get to know this man in order to survive, in order to do what she needed to do. Part of her task was to get to know him intimately because she had to protect herself from him because she came there to kill him. And this is someone who is extremely perceptive, who would know someone's intentions without them speaking them. So it was a survival thing in the beginning for her to get to know his humanity as intimately as possible. Well, guess what? When you get to know somebody's humanity as intimately as possible, you start to feel connected with them. And I think she genuinely found admirable parts of this man, that he has this within him to love someone so intensely that he would feel this incredible pain upon that loss, that he has it within him to love someone. And he even says to her, at a certain point, I lost Stevan. I can't lose you too. And so he in turn, and I think that part of her knew that, like they have this wonderful, banter between the two of them. Like she gives him something that he needs, and she needed him to be dependent on her in order for her to convince him in the beginning that to allow him in, to allow her in. So it's just this trap that she set for herself in a sense. That's my take on it anyway. What do you think?
I think you're right. I mean, I totally agree with that. I think that those passages that we just saw, she is someone who, like a lot of exiled people, is living with a fragmented identity. And what she wants more than anything else is a way to unify and feel whole inside herself.
Okay.
That is taken up by her mission to assassinate him at first. And then she puts on this mask of the woman in the Saishan, the woman at court, the woman who has to be the person that he will desire. And eventually she begins to identify with the mask.
Right.
And she is uniquely susceptible to that identification because what's underneath the mask is something that's broken.
Right.
And this is some way to make a whole identity. And in like exactly like you said, in Brandon, she finds someone who is needing her, who is also in grief, who is also an exile.
Yep.
So everybody in this book is an exile. Like I
Yep.
mentioned, she uh she can be for him what he needs. That is an identity she can assume. And slowly over time, she does assume it. There's a big time gap between uh, uh, the Dinor's flashbacks of her experiences right after Tigana's fall and when she and the present of the novel, like 18 years, like well, probably like 15 years. And a lot can gradually change over a period like that. Things can happen that you don't necessarily intend or expect to happen,
Right.
and people have needs. I don't know if you've seen anything about a movie that just came out called One Battle After Another.
Hmm.
Paul Thomas Anderson's new movie. Highly, highly recommend. One of the best movies of the year. It's
Wow.
based on Thomas Pynchon's novel Vineland about uh, washed up 60s revolutionaries. And one of the main characters is a woman who eventually betrays her revolutionary friends and gets with the fascist cop. And a huge question in the book is, why does she do this? What is the reason? And the book is never very clear about that. In the same way that it's never spelled out why Dianora makes this turn.
Right.
But you're led to believe that it's not one thing. It's a combination of a lot of complex things over time. Psychological needs, emotional needs, sexual needs, uh, political needs, they fuse, and all of a sudden you look up and you're in love with the person who destroyed
Yeah.
your city. Um, I like that Kay doesn't give an easy pat answer to this question, but it is one of the biggest questions of the book.
It is also fascinating, while we're on her character, how Kay seems to use sex as with these very broken characters as a way of feeling a wholeness, a kind of wholeness. There's some people seem to object to Kay's sex scenes or whatever. I don't have any real comment on that, other than the fact that I do think that he uses this as an important part of this theme, the idea of these fragmented people seeking wholeness. And that is
Yeah.
certainly one obvious way that people do. I mean, that's a very real thing, isn't it?
Yes.
The sense of wholeness, at least during the act. And maybe it's deluding oneself, but that is certainly a part of, again, Dianora's relationship with Brandon. She is part of his Saishan. She is, that's her purpose, right? I mean,
She's a
that is,
concubine. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah,
But let's talk about that because we were broaching that. This is for me one of the areas where I think his ambition exceeds his execution, and
uh-huh,
it's not because these things aren't realistic. It's that the time that is spent on them, in
uh-huh,
particular two instances that I would just want to touch on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
sure.
Is not quite long enough, and not quite in depth enough, I think. And the two are the incest scene between uh, uh,
Baird
Dianora and
and
Baird,
yeah, yeah,
which was very shocking to read.
yeah.
And the second one is the dalliance, the sexual encounter that Devin has with Alienor of Borso.
Okay,
And let's go to the Devon one. Let's read it. Read a quick piece of that
okay.
because I
Quick
think
piece. Yeah,
well we're not gonna read anything graphic, but at the end there are some very telling lines that I think. Okay, here we go.
okay.
So I'm going to share this. This is after they've had their encounter, an encounter which is, uh, it's a little abrupt. And Alienor is not a very well developed character. It's
I
like
totally agree. Yep.
this is really her only purpose, and so I think a disservice is being done here. It's something for Devon, and what we get are characters who are kind of they're being more articulate than they would be in real life, which you
Uh-huh.
sometimes see.
Uh-huh.
So after they've had sex, an all-night session, it's like it's this education for Devon, but it's also he's realizing that this is fulfilling some purpose for Alienor, something he's sort of grasping at. And he says to her afterwards, "Is this what happens to us
Hmm.
uh, when we are no longer free? Is this what happens to our love?" And
Right.
what's he talking about? He's talking about is this kind of uh, uh, is this kind of what Kay calls an insurrection in the dark or insurrection in the night, an idea he gets from Milan Kundera, of the ways that political repression, the way we feel it, can be displaced into our sexual lives and in not a particularly stable way.
Right.
So he's wondering, is this what happens when we're not free? She says in response, it is one of the things that happens to us, a kind of insurrection in the dark that
Hmm.
somehow stands against the laws of day that bind us and cannot be broken now. Now that's beautiful, but I don't believe it. It's something
Uh-huh.
someone would say, but
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I mean, she's laying it out a little too clearly here, but she's laying it out. And he responds, possibly it's that, or else an admission somewhere in the soul that we deserve no more than this, nothing that goes deeper, since we are not free and have accepted that.
Hmm.
So what's he saying? He's saying that
We feel like we have to earn our punishment, right?
yes, we have to earn, and there is a amount of scratching and blood that's happening in this sexual encounter. But also, he's essentially accusing her and accusing maybe a lot of other people the fact that yeah, Tigana was erased, but the entire palm is being subjugated by these two wizards, and we are not doing anything about it. We're just living our lives and trying to survive without coming together and fighting for our freedom.
Right.
And because we've accepted that, we're saying because you've accepted that, this is what your life has become. Having these kind of illicit sexual encounters in the dark of night where the powers who really control your life can't see you and they can't interfere. This is an extremely complex and interesting theme to deal with,
Hmm.
but it's not dealt with very extensively. And if you want an extensive treatment of this, read The Book of Laughter and Forgetting and The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. Uh, they are full book explorations of these ideas.
Uh-huh.
As well as, like I said, I read Margaret Duras' The Lover, another interesting, from a woman's perspective, treatment of this. So, what did you think of this scene when you read it?
Oh, I agree with everything you said. Once again, I felt as I was reading this and the Nightwalker portion of the story that this was the least well integrated part of the story. This, for me, you could have cut out all of Alionor's character and the Nightwalker part, which does appear again at the end briefly as the four Nightwalkers aid Airline and the others and Sandra as they're trying to counter Brandon's magic. They give them a little bit of
Yeah.
strength. Frankly, I think it would have been a stronger book without the Alienor part and the Nightwalker part, where Baird, you remember where Baird, the whole thing
Oh
about
yeah.
the
Corn
corn
swords.
swords and everything. I mean, that part did not. I think it could have been uh, perhaps better integrated. Is the way I'm going to put it. But yeah, I don't know
I,
how.
I I agree. I think it's evocative as a short story, like,
Yeah.
but and it's well written, as everything by him is well written. But I agree, and I don't really even know how to fit it. I would love to read more about what people have said about it because I don't really know how to fit it into uh, all the rest of the stuff he's trying to do in the book. It did feel kind of out of left field. This feels very in line with the themes he's trying to get at,
Yes.
but it is the characters become mouthpieces for ideas, which is never something that you want. You want the characters to organically
Right.
be who they are and
Right.
have the ideas almost be explored incidentally. And he says in the back of the book that he wanted to insert the themes like a stiletto and not a hammer.
Yeah.
This is more hammer than stiletto, I think.
I agree. And these are a couple missteps in a 800-page book that is brilliant. So yeah, just to be clear, I think that he's I mean, and this is one of his earlier books as well. And as you said in the beginning, if this
Yeah.
is, not his best, then I can't wait to read his best. So you've got another passage here for us?
Yeah, I wanted to just quickly go through the Barrett and Dianora scene,
Gotcha.
uh, because again, it's beautiful in what it's trying to say. I just think like it is uh, not necessarily dealt uh, with the kind of time that it could be.
Right.
So this is the whole part where and then this is a beautiful part too, where she is uh, living in Tigana or Lower Corte after the fall, and she's with her brother and she's with their servant, and they're being harassed by the people who are now the Egrathan people who are now there. Um, and what happens is that she slowly starts to have this illicit relationship with her brother.
Right. Right.
Sorry, let me see if I can just find this real quick.
Yep.
Here we go. So the world was a place of dreaming or of sorrow, one or both of those, one or both. In the sanctuary of night, again, sanctuary of night,
Yep.
this realm where things can happen
Right.
outside the view of the powers. She slowly pulled his tunic over his head, careful of his wounds, and then she slipped free of her own robe. Her heart was beating like the heart of a captured forest creature. She could feel the race of his pulse when her fingers touched his throat. Both of the moons had set. The wind was in all the leaves outside, and so in all that darkness, dark over and about and close gathered around them, the full dark of moonless night and the darkness of their days, the two of them sought a pitiful illicit shelter in
Yes.
each other from the ruin of their world. And her brother asks, "What are we doing? What have we done?" And she says, "What has been done to us?"
To us. Yep. 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 Echoing or preceding Devon's statement to Alienor, essentially.
Exactly. It's powerful. It is powerful. But I think that it's such a extreme choice that I don't know. It I always hate to ask, was it necessary? Because you can find a reason for anything, and I don't know Kay's reasons,
Yeah.
explicitly, but I do feel that it was something that when I came to it, I was like, okay, okay, so that went one step, maybe many steps further than I thought. Right
Yeah.
at the end of a very beautiful section
Yeah.
of this period of time in Tigana after the fall. I don't know. Did it work for you? Was it?
So for me, I feel that this was better integrated than what we within the Alienor part.
I
And
agree with that.
I do think that the goal here for Kay was not to, it was to make us uncomfortable. Yes. Was to make the reader uncomfortable. And I guarantee you, he probably succeeded with almost all of his readers there.
Yes.
And the idea that we're uncomfortable here puts us in a space, I think, where we're required almost to think about what has been done to these young people. What trauma have they undergone
Yes.
that would put them in a place where they would seek this with each
Hmm.
other. And that's pretty deep in a sense, I think. The idea that they would have to seek solace in each other in a situation where there is no solace outside of that, the protection of night, the privacy of this bedroom. There is no solace outside, and so you get it where you can. So I feel like that works for me. It made me deeply uncomfortable, but it also, I think, makes sense from just a human perspective, that look what's been done to these people. There is nowhere else for them to turn but each other. They can't go outside and be themselves. They're going to get beat up, by these soldiers, by these brutes who have occupied their city. So this is their everything. This is their world away from the world, in a sense. And I don't think either of them really knew what they were doing in the moment either. You know, they're
Yeah.
kids. They're kids. But their world has been warped, and they've been warped along with it. And,
Yeah.
and this kind of makes sense that something like this could happen in that situation, to me anyway. So
Well, I agree. I mean, I certainly agree that it is more integrated than the Alienors team.
yeah,
Um, and what you just did there, I think, is an example, and it's beautifully said, is an example of the situation where something in a text makes sense. You can explain it by talking about it further in the way that you did very articulately, but the execution of it in the text
Mhm.
is not persuasive enough. And
Yeah,
that's sort of how I felt. Like I could see this. I could see this as something happening. It seems, it is shocking and uncomfortable, and that's the intention. And it's definitely one of the most controversial parts of the book. I can guarantee among people.
yeah,
But it is a very short, beautifully written couple
yeah,
paragraphs,
right.
But as beautiful as it is written, I think it needed a little more space and development, because I can talk about why it should fit, but that's how much are we asking of the reader? Like that's a like how much are we asking of the reader to bring to something in order to make it fit and work within a text, and how much is the author need? And it just was not quite there for me. But
Yeah,
again, this is this I love the ambition. I
yeah,
really do. And like I, do this and come up a little short versus not even trying. Like I really do appreciate what he's trying to do here.
yeah,
And that's why I was inspired to go read more in this similar vein, because I wanted to see what other authors have done with these same ideas, because they're
yeah,
clearly potent, real ideas. Anyway, so
yeah.
that's how I felt about it.
Kay is a writer in general who asks a lot of the reader, invites the reader, actually. And that's one of the things I think we both love about this is that
Yeah.
there are so many sections in here where, for example, Devin is witnessing the ring retrieving scene with he's on the ship perched on the mast or whatever, and he's watching this, and he makes a judgment about Brandon. How can he be so impassive when this woman has done this incredible sacrifice for him? What he doesn't know is that Rune is enacting Brandon's real emotions, in that moment. And Rune is all like completely like a mess, right? So we know, the reader knows, we put that together, right? Devin doesn't know in that moment. But the reader knows that Brandon is experiencing a tumultuous emotions in that moment. He's just not showing it, right? And this is the kind of thing he does repeatedly. He's asking the reader to make these connections, to be an active reader in that sense. That's something I
It's a
love.
it's a delicate balance. It really is delicate balance. Like, where does the line cross from asking the reader to be active to you've actually not given us enough? Like we were being too active, and that is a very delicate balance, because you don't know where one crosses into the other,
Yeah,
and it's going to be different for every person.
yeah.
Um, okay,
So
can we talk about Erlane?
yes, that was my next thing, actually. We talked about, I think, Dianora. We could go on and on all day about her, but
Yes.
we've got the whole cast here of the rebels. So we need to talk about them. And to me, really the most fascinating one is Airline, because of the conflict. Again, conflict is just everywhere here. Tension is everywhere. What Allison does in order to force Airline into this rebellion and his development as a character, I think, is utterly brilliant. Again, this is
Yes.
again after Dianora. I think the most fascinating aspect of the story is how Airline is enlisted forcibly into the cause, and his evolution. So take it away. What
So
do you?
we absolutely have to read this passage, which is, I think, one of the most important passages in the book.
Yeah,
Um, and I've cut it down here so that we can get the spirit of it. But it starts here, and it's Erline right after he's been bounded to Alysanne, because Alysanne has this power to bind a wizard.
yep,
And Erline didn't see it coming, and then it happens, and he's he can't believe it. He says, "Curse the bones of your ancestors and blight the lives of your children and your children's children for what you've done to me." It was the voice of someone wronged, brutally, grievously wronged.
Yep.
Alysanne responds, "I was cursed almost 19 years ago, and my ancestors were, and whatever children I or any of my people might have, it is a curse I have set my life to undo while time yet allows."
Wow.
Every true prince of Tigana, Erlaine says, has known since the beginning how awful a gift the god gave them, how savage a power over a free, living soul.
Yes.
Erlaine continues, "And you, a puling princeling without even a land to rule, have just casually, viciously set your hands upon my life. Not casually, only because I have no home, because Tigana is dying and will be lost if I do not do something. And what part of that little speech gives you rights over my life and my death?" Erlaine says. "I have a duty," says Alysanne. "I must use what tools come to hand." And Erlaine responds, "I'm not a tool. You can't use me. I'm a free and living soul." And Alysanne understands that. Erlaine denies again, "We are free. There's always a choice." Then Sandre steps up and says, "Some choices are closed to some of us. Some men must make choices for those who cannot, whether through lack of will or lack of power. We may choose not to slay the man who is trying to kill our child." So Alysanne may have not chose not to bind a wizard who might be needed by his people. There's no true alternative for someone with honor. I mean, so Sandre is making the point that
Yeah.
Alysanne has to do this because honor demands that he fight for the freedom of his people, and Erlaine is something he just can't pass up. And by the way, Sandre is a wizard as well.
Yes. who
Um,
who didn't, ironically, as he's saying here, we may choose not to slay the man who is trying to kill our child. So Alisand may have chosen not to bind a wizard who might be needed by his people, his children. This is a man who didn't cut his own hand to save his own son, but did cut it later on to save Katrina. That's something we can talk about as well. But there's so many layers to this dialogue here.
and also and all so many layers, and also kill our child, Sandre's own child, Tommaso, one of the great lost characters of the book.
Yep.
uh Sandre kills him,
He
or
actually kills him to
not
avoid
he
him being tortured and confessing
yes,
everything. Yeah.
yes, and so he still has a plan to enact his revenge on Alberico,
Yep.
but it's yeah, so there's a lot of layers here. And then Erlaine says, "What prince compels a free man to assure death at his side and then speaks of honor? Call it naked power and have done.
Hmm.
The honor of a ruler and his duty lies in the care for his land and his people. That is the only true measure. And the price, part of that price, comes when he must go against his own soul's need." So he understands, and he knows Alysanne understands, that he doesn't want to have to be doing this, but the situation demands it. It will grieve him to the very bones of his hands.
Yep.
Do we die as willing victims, or while trying to be free? Do we skulk as you have done all these? So now he's accusing Erlaine. Do we skulk as you have done all these years, hiding from sorcerers? Because we know sorcerers have been hunted down, so they have to. They cut their two fingers off to become sorcerers,
Yep.
powerful sorcerers, but then they create an illusion that the fingers are there, so that they won't be detected by the people who are out hunting them.
Yep.
And then Erlaine says, before this, he doesn't care. He says, "Before the sun went down, I was free. Now I'm a slave." And Devin joins in. He says, "You were not free.
Yeah.
You think you were free. You were not free." And then this is the most this is now the two most important things.
Hmm.
Erlaine laying out his perspective here. "I say I was free. There may have been laws that constrained me, and one government ruling where I might have wished for another. But the roads are safer now than they were when this man ruled in Astabar, meaning Sandre, or that one's father, Alison's father, ruled in Tigana, and I carried my life where I wanted to go. You will all have to forgive my insensitivity if I say that Brandon of Egrath's spell on the name of Tigana was not the first and last thought of my days."
Wow.
And
Not my
Allison,
problem. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and some things are better. And hey, yeah, I might maybe would wish to not have to conceal my fingers all the time, and maybe I would wish for a better government. And by the way, Erlaine is from Senzio, the
Right.
one province that has not been captured by, although it is under a subjugation of its own kind.
Correct.
Uh, and this is Allison's response that really says it all. Safer arose, you said, one government where you might have wished for another. You have been the worst thing I know, a willing subject of two tyrants. Your idea of freedom is exactly what has let them conquer us and then hold us. You called yourself free. You were only free to hide and to
Mm.
soil your breeches if a sorcerer or one of their trackers came within 10 miles of your little screening spell. You were free to walk past death wheels with your fellow wizards riding on them, and free to turn your back and continue on your way. Not anymore, Erlaine DiCenzo. By the triad, and this is the important line, you are in it now.
In it now.
I
Yeah.
was, this is just an incredible passage for
Mm.
the questions it raises. What comes to you first when you see this?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the idea that we can ignore other people's sorrows and loss and injustices because it doesn't affect us directly, you know, that we can carry on if as long as we can carry on with a certain percentage of normality, it's we can ignore this, going on elsewhere. And I feel that as much as it's horrible that I mean, it's interesting. I just watched the Star Wars offshoot TV show, what
Andor?
Andor, which is
Yeah,
a show that really does one of the things it does brilliantly is it explores
brilliant show.
what does rebelling do to you? What does it make you do? What do you become when you rebel against the authoritarian regime and you feel that you have to do certain things that might morally compromise you in order for the greater cause? What do you then become? And this is a thing that I think we see so beautifully illustrated here with, first of all, Alassane committing this brutal act of taking away a man's freedom, enslaving a human being. And Airline is not wrong about that.
No,
But Alassane is also not wrong. And Sandre is also not wrong in saying, well, you're in it now, because you are connected to these people whom you've just been ignoring all this time and in trying to be as normal as you can while other people are suffering. You are connected, whether you acknowledge it or not. You are connected. And I feel like that is the world we live in. That yes, we can hide and pretend that things aren't happening, but we are connected. And sometimes we're even contributing, maybe not in ways that we completely understand, but we are sometimes even contributing by being part of a global world, by being part of a complex society. We may even be contributing to things that are injustices in the world. And we are connected, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And that is just so powerful. And it's not, again, the complexity of this, it's not just a simple, this is bad and this is good. This is
exactly.
really complex. This is really nuanced. And I feel for everybody in this situation.
Yeah, it's such a powerful scene, and Kay is not providing easy answers here,
Oh,
partly because there are no easy answers. And really, in a fable-like way, Erlaine as a character is meant to hold a lot of the themes that a few of the most important themes of this book. One is the question of violence in the struggle for freedom. And that is a question that is deep and complex, and it gets straight to Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth, which I told you I read. He's sort of depicted as this prophet of violence. He said that the dehumanizing violence of the colonial powers was such that it necessitated a a greater violence. Colonialism is not a thinking machine nor a body endowed with reasoning faculties. It is violence in its natural state, and it will only yield when confronted with greater violence.
yep.
Now, the opposite of this might be Gandhi's civil disobedience and
MLK Jr.
nonviolence, MLK Jr. And there's always going to be a tension between these things. And what's
Yep.
left out of the conversation, I think, is that each situation has its own context. The context in Algeria, with the French that Fanon was talking about, I mean, violence was already happening maybe required violence, and the violence of the oppressor is always the bigger violence. In this case, it certainly is, and it's dehumanizing. It's dehumanizing because in this sort of beautiful fantasy way, Brandon's taken away the whole memory. He's taken away their identity. He's dehumanized them. But the important thing that Fanon goes on to say is that the liberation of the individual does not mean giving him the right to occupy the former colonist's place.
There we go.
Decolonization must transform social relations and create new men. This is what's so often missed in Fanon's thought, which is that yes, the decolonization period might be a violent one, but it's a short period, and it's about what comes after that's really important.
Hmm.
And we are made by Kay to feel uncomfortable by what Allison does to Erlane.
Yep.
And we should feel uncomfortable about it
Yep.
because is it necessary? Maybe it's necessary. Uh, maybe not. It's hard to say. But if the relationship of a master to slave, like what Allison is doing to Erlane, is something that persists even after the goal is achieved, which often happens in the real world, then what have we been fighting for in the first place?
Right.
These are such deep, complex issues. Now, in the book, and I think Kay makes a very important point of doing this. There is a point at which Allison willingly frees Erlane from the bondage.
Yes.
Um,
After he saves Katrina.
After he saves Catriona, and it's not we're not being asked to forgive him for what he did or
Right.
excuse him morally for what he did to Erlane. I mean, I think every person reading this book is going to feel uncomfortable by the passage that we read.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. You're going to feel uncomfortable. But he does free him later. And maybe that's his way of saying, okay, he realizes the second point that Fanon made, which is that violence might cause, uh, violence is unwieldy and it may cause atrocities of some kind, but we have to always remember what we're fighting for. We're fighting for freedom. There's another thing I want to bring up very, very briefly, which is uh, this movie, The Battle of Algiers, which
Ah.
really is one of the best movies ever made, and I highly recommend everyone seeing it. It is a movie about the Algerian liberation struggle from the French. It's a brutal movie, but a beautiful movie. And there's an extraordinary scene where three of the women, three of the Algerian women, set bombs for in the European quarter, is they're freedom fighters fighting with the FLN. And in the scene where they do that, they make a point of showing who's in those cafes where they set the bombs. And this image is I think, the most powerful image of the movie.
Hmm.
There's a little child eating an ice cream cone. And this is just seconds before the bomb blows up.
Oh my
Now,
God.
this child is innocent. This child did not colonize Algeria,
Right.
but he is a casualty of this war.
Yeah.
And Erlane is sort of filling that role as well. You
Yeah.
know, we cannot say that this is something that we want to happen. We just can't, you know, but we also know that of the realities of these things. And so I'm not here to tell you that any of these things are the right things. But Kay, when he's saying, I want to bring this home to the reader and not just
Mhm.
have it be escapist, this really hit for me. This scene is one of my favorite in the whole book.
Yeah. Yeah. It's powerful stuff. Really powerful writing for sure. And the fact that airline does eventually become a willing part of the rebellion, and in fact crucial at the end, the battle at the end where they're able to hold back Brandon's power enough that Brandon and the Barbadian guy,
Alberico.
Alberico, are essentially eliminating each other. They're playing the two off against each other, which is Allison's grand plan from the beginning. He understood we got to take them both out. We can't just take out one. Otherwise, we'll be under one authoritarian regime instead of two. So
But that's his plan. He wants to free the entire Palm.
everybody,
He
yeah,
he wants to free everyone. And he is essentially accusing, as well as Sandre, accusing Erlaine of complicity by being silent. Silence is complicity.
yep, yep, yep,
Again, do we agree with that? Do we not agree with that?
yep.
But that is a common idea that we have to grapple with. And Erlaine is this character who's got to hold both these big themes. This theme of somebody who he said, "You're in it now." Well, really, you were always in it. You were in it, even if you didn't want to be.
Yeah.
By the there's I'm just going to keep going back to slides because I'm obsessed with slides. But there's this great quote that's often misattributed to uh, uh, Edmund Burke, but the classic line from John Stuart Mill:
That's right.
"Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing."
Yep, and that's airline. He was looking on and doing nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's one of my favorite themes of the book, and also just everything with Erline and how he sort of develops and
It's
creates an
interesting.
he creates an awareness of what is at stake.
He does, and it's fascinating to me how he ultimately does go all in, and it's because he makes a personal connection. It's in so many ways, and that's how humans are. I think we're very good at pushing something off and saying, no, that's remote for me. I can't do anything about that. That's outside my sphere of influence. But when we meet someone and we know someone who is affected by this, who's in it, then it's a lot harder for us to ignore, isn't it? And then Airline, the moment when he really is all in, when he saves Katrina, and she's got these two
Beautiful scene.
spectacular scenes. The one when she dives into the water, pretending to commit suicide, and the other time, which is an interesting parallel, when she actually does essentially take her own life, though she gets saved by airline after killing the ambassador from Igrath in Senzio. Or no, is it? Yeah, do I have that right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, yeah, it's the Agrathan
It's the
ambassador
bar
in Senzia. Or
Right,
no,
right.
it's
It's
the
Barbadian ambassador. Sorry, yes.
somebody, yeah.
Yes, it's Alberico's ambassador, the Barbadian one in Senzio that she assassinates with a very by being his what did he call her? His red vixen or something like
Oh yeah, yeah.
that. But she uses I mean and it's so out of her character, but she's willing to sacrifice herself in that way and with her life in that moment in order to this is the spark that gets the conflict going because they had done everything to get the players in place. But because Alberico was sniffing something, he was being a little cautious there. The conflict wasn't happening. And so it's Katrina's sacrifice that makes it happen. But this is the moment, the whole point of this is the airline is all in only when he realizes, I care about these people. I
Yeah.
care about these people. Right. And it's
He
because
cares
he's,
about them because he was forced to be there,
yeah,
but again, not simple. It's also the
awesome.
scene where it's also the in the aftermath of the scene, one of the slightly strange things happens, which is that I think this is the part where Allison declares his love for Catriona, which was a little bit out of
Yes.
left
That
field for
came out
me.
of, that was a little out of nowhere for me. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
But I wanted more from Catriona. I mean, I love that character.
Yeah, yeah. Very
You know,
compelling character. And
yeah,
there's her backstory with her father being a coward and her trying to compensate for that. But I think we get the view from Alison that no, it's not so simple. It's not like he's just a coward. He had a family that he was trying to protect. You can't call that an act of cowardice. It's not black and white. And unfortunately, Katrina had this black and white view of the whole thing, whereas Alison, ironically, as somebody who forced airline to get involved, has a more nuanced view and says, no, actually, maybe it's, from his perspective, it's an understandable act to try to preserve his family rather than sacrifice for Tigana. And yeah, it's a fascinating character, very strong character. I really enjoyed her arc as well, but I would have loved more of her for sure.
yeah, yeah.
But what she's willing to give up for the cause And from the beginning, in the first, with Devin in the closet in the beginning, it's not something she wants to do, but she does it at spur of the moment because she feels it's important that he remain ignorant and to preserve their secrecy. Everything she does along the way, that's a dedicated rebel
Yeah.
right there,
She's with Devin, she is the new generation.
yeah,
She is going to be the one who takes this movement forward once they win the freedom.
yeah,
Once Tigana is returned to the world,
yeah.
they're the ones who are going to step in and uh, that is this is also a really deep point uh, that Kay is making about memory, and it goes to. Should we talk about the Shelto's decision at the end?
This is exactly. I mean, it's exactly where I was going to go. I think we talked about the complexity
Because this
of all of
connects
this.
for sure.
And the final thing I think we should talk about is the ending because two things are left hanging in a sense. And I want to hear what you think about Kay's decisions here because I really like what he does, but I want to
Me
hear what you
too.
think too. And first of all, he leaves Alysanne in ignorance that Rune was actually his father, Valentine, the whole time. Only Skelto knows this, and that's how it's going to be. It's not going to be part of history, and which is again a statement about history, isn't it? Like how many gaps, how many things do we not know about
Yeah.
history, not only because the winner writes the story, but also because of all these the unknown sacrifices, the unwitnessed things, the secrets that never emerge. And so that, and then also the fact that Baird does not know that Dianora, his sister,
Yeah.
was right there. So these two things, these two big secrets are kept at the end. One in ignorance because Skelto doesn't make the connection between Baird and Dianora, but knowingly, Skelto withholds the information from Alysanne. So, what did you think of both of these choices at the
Well,
end?
they're bold choices,
Yeah.
because you'd expect at least, the very least, a reunion between Barrett and Dianora. But I really like them as well. They really work for me. Like I told you in an email, Shelto's decision to not tell Allison about Rune slash Valentin is very reminiscent of oh wait, can we do no, I won't do any Malazan spoilers, but I think you
Okay.
know the moment I'm talking about. A very poignant moment in Malazan,
Yeah.
um, where out of a pity and love, there is a choice. He chooses not to reveal this. And why does he choose that? And that we really have to go here to the epigraphs.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a huge fan of epigraphs. It's also the name of the fourth section of the book, which is called "What Can a Flame Remember?" Now, another extremely interesting writer who you should all read is George Seferis, who was a Greek poet in the early to mid 20th century. Gorgeous, beautiful poetry. And he was in exile. He lived in Smyrna in what is now Turkey during the period when the Greeks were driven out of Turkey, and the Greek and Turkish populations of Turkey and Greece were swapped, and there was a lot of displacement and forced displacement. And so
Right.
he knows what it's like to be in exile. And so if you want to read somebody who understands what it is to be what the identity of someone as an exile is, read his poetry.
Mhm.
And so I'm gonna just show you the part of the poem where the epigraph comes from. It's
Okay.
a poem
Cool.
called Mr. Stratus Thalassinos describes a man. It's a man describing his life and thinking over his memories in multiple sections. But this is the part of the book where the poem where the epigraph comes from. They told us you'll conquer when you submit. We submitted and found ashes. They told us you'll conquer when you love. We loved and found ashes. They told us you'll conquer when you abandon your life. We abandoned our life and found ashes. We found ashes. It remains to rediscover our life now that we've nothing left. I imagine that he who'll rediscover life, in spite of so much paper, so many emotions, so many debates, and so much teaching, will be someone like us, only with a slightly tougher memory.
Mm,
We ourselves can't help still remembering what we've given. He'll remember only what he's gained from each of his offerings.
mm,
What can a flame remember? If it remembers a little less than is necessary, it goes out. If it remembers a little more than is necessary, it goes out. If it could only teach us while it burns to remember correctly.
mm,
I've come to an end, and this is just such a beautiful image. It's so pertinent to the book. If only someone else could begin at the point where I've ended. There are times when I have the impression that I've reached the limit, that everything's in its place, ready to sing together in harmony, the machine on the point of starting. I can even imagine it in motion, alive, like something unsuspectedly new, but there's still something, an infinitesimal obstacle, a grain of sand, shrinking and shrinking, yet unable to disappear completely. I don't know what I ought to say or what I ought to do. Sometimes that obstacle seems to me like a teardrop wedged into some articulation of the orchestra, keeping it silent until it's been dissolved. And I have an unbearable feeling that all the rest of my life won't be sufficient to dissolve this drop within my soul. And I'm haunted by the thought that if they were to burn me alive, this obstinate moment would be the last to surrender.
wow.
Now, it is a beautiful, beautiful image. And the way that it relates to the book is that there's this idea of a flame.
Mm,
And the metaphor is great because you give too much oxygen to a flame, you blow too hard, it's going to go out.
right.
If there's no oxygen, the flame can't burn. There is no flame. So there is a balance that needs to be found. And the nature of what Brandon has done to Valentin is so extremely brutal
Mm,
that if Allison were to find out what happened to him, it's completely reasonable and understandable to think that it might he might seek to go on the kind of revenge
hmm.
that essentially destroyed Brandon.
It's a wound.
And then there might be
Yeah.
a back and forth of reprisals on and on forever. And so he makes this decision to not tell him what happened so that he doesn't have to know everything. He doesn't have to be plagued by this memory of what happened to his father. He can move forward. And this idea of, which I highlighted, we ourselves can't help remembering what we've given. He'll remember only what he's gained from each of his offerings.
Huh.
This past generation is what Sepharis is saying is that we've submitted and found we've they told us to submit. They told us to love. They told us to abandon your life. We've done all these things, but we're too infected by them. We can't let them go. They are this infinitesimal piece inside our soul that we can never dissolve
Yeah.
because we're too focused on the sacrifices we've made. But the person who will move forward into the new world is the one who won't be dwelling on the sacrifices. They'll be dwelling on what we can build and what we can offer. And that is what is represented by Devin and Catriona, like we said, this new generation of people who aren't burdened by the traumas that they experienced. And also, like we said before, Baird, he's going to be a builder. He's going to build the future. And the ones who couldn't move forward were the ones who were who were burdened by these memories. People like Brandon, people like Dianora to a certain extent, and a very short-lived but persuasive character we haven't talked about, Allison's mother, Pasithea,
Yes.
who is so consumed by what happened that she cannot see Allison's big plan to unite the Palm as something even worth doing. All she wants is revenge on Brandon. And she's pissed at her son, even in her dying moments, that he will not do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so read the epigraphs, people, because there's a lot, there's a
Um,
lot that the K wants to say, and I think it is encapsulated beautifully by this epigraph and by the moment of Shelto not telling him.
yeah. Yeah, powerful stuff. And a similar thing I think goes, though it's less purposeful, but a similar thing maybe goes for Baird and Dianora. Probably better that he not know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Well, there's that beautifully, also that beautifully, we talked about how we thought the ending was great, but the ending
the
is
epilogue.
the epilogue is
Uh,
very interesting. And
the
especially the very last line.
the spotting of the Veselka again. And
Yes.
we know, okay, so there we have Sandre, we have Devon, and we have Baird. And we know that when three men see a Rusalka, one of them is going to die. We
Hmm.
assuming that's got to be Sandre since he's elderly, but who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows? The other has a fork in his life, and the other will be blessed or whatever, right? I think I've got that right. Those are the three
Yes, yes,
options there.
yes.
And we're left completely wondering which of the three is going to be which here, right? Yeah.
It's a totally magical,
Yeah.
really magical moment because yes, every reader's going to have their version of who they think should apply to those three things.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's a perfect metaphor for what Kay's been doing for the whole book.
Yep.
He's just he's just setting up a possibility, a question, and he's like, I don't know. I just thought that was so brilliant. Like, I felt like I was the one who ended the book in a way.
Yeah. And like I said before, he is inviting the reader to be active. And
Yeah,
that is one of the things I really admire about this writer, among others, the prose, the tension that he succeeded in every single page of this book for me was I was hooked because of the tension within the characters and the overall tension of the story. Just brilliant stuff. And you said it perfectly. The idea that we're left with a question at the end. It seems appropriate, doesn't it?
it does.
Yeah. Well, I think we did a pretty. I mean, obviously we didn't talk about everything in here, which is impossible, maybe. But
It's impossible.
we took a good swing at it.
We could, I mean, the
Didn't we,
scene
Evan?
in the lodge at the very beginning, one of the great scenes to read.
Yeah. Ah, my goodness, we didn't do the lodge
But
scene. Yeah.
but
And talk
that's a
about
that's
tension. Yeah.
yeah, but that's a page turner. I mean, that really is like so exciting. What an inciting incident for the story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I was hooked from that moment. I was like, okay, turn it up. I'm not putting this thing down.
And
You
Kay even
know,
said, I think, that that was the scene that started the book, basically. That was what he had in his head in the beginning, was that lodge scene where, suddenly Alassane turns up in the window there, and, there's this conspiracy going on, and are they going to get caught? And the betrayal from within the family and all of this, just so well done.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you for being here and further developing my appreciation. I love what you did with this and the connections you made with all of these other stories and some even from our own world, fictional and nonfiction and so forth. I think we've established that what Kay's done here is incredibly relevant, incredibly important for people to engage with, right?
Anything that is going to bring you deeper into the story and then inspire you to seek echoes outside of the story in your life and in literature. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, yeah. And we are going to be reading more K, guys. So if you enjoyed this, be on the lookout. We're going to be going through some
I've
more.
heard it gets better. I've heard it gets better.
I don't know how, but we'll find out. We'll find out. It's amazing to me. But thank you so much, Evan, once again, for being here for this conversation. It's always a joy and a pleasure and a learning experience to chat with you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. There's a link in the description in case you've never heard of Evan's channel, which I doubt, but it's called Nerdwriter 1. And check it out. It's just some brilliant, brilliant content. If you like what Evan has said here, wait do you see his really awesome, polished, just beautiful documentary style videos on a variety of topics. They'll make you think for sure. But yeah, that's it for us for now.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you, Philip.
my
I
pleasure.
love your channel. It's my happy place. Always
Aw.
glad to be here.
Well, thank you, and I'm happy to have you here. But that's it for us for now. Until next time.